Here, Preeti. And by way of introduction, she is a recent graduate from the prestigious IIM Kolkata. For those of you who might remember Professor Ramya used to be a Sasken. So that's when I got an opportunity to briefly interact with Preeti. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in some time. Prior to graduating from IIM Kolkata, she has graduated from Sri Ram College of Commerce, which is another reputed institution. So she has a very spectacular academic credentials behind her. Uh, there's another side to it. Preeti was diagnosed with cerebral palsy at the very beginning, at birth. And she has been a real fighter. She's worked hard towards accomplishing both her professional as well as personal goals. So this can-do spirit, what is completely epitomized by Preeti, is what we all would like to hear this afternoon and draw inspiration from it. Currently, Preeti landed a job with what many would call a dream company with Accenture Consulting in the area of strategy. She has begun her career on a very promising note. Aside from work and a stellar academic credentials, Preeti is an active voice in establishing disability rights. Disability rights are very, very, very important. And she identifies herself as a disability rights advocate, which is, I think, a very modest tag. I'm sure she will, over a period of time, transform into being a champion for people with all kinds of abilities. She also writes actively on inclusion and disability on various platforms. And above all, to just recollect, she has a dazzling smile. This is what struck me when I had a brief interaction with her in a class or in a session that I participated, which Ramya facilitated. The one thing that struck me was this, and uh, it turned a full circle when I got a notice back saying, here's someone who can inspire us. I didn't even make a connection. And then I wrote to my team and said, that they were absolutely delighted to have Preeti. And when I spoke to her, she said, look, I know you. So here's someone who can give us a bit of that smile and inspire us in these difficult times. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you so much, Swami. That was very, very overwhelming introduction. I feel very honored that someone like you is saying such amazing words about me. I don't know how much of them, how many of them I deserve actually. But I will start with how I feel about how I have actually come into this space now. So I'll tell a little bit of stories about myself. So in case I'm boring you guys, I will apologize in beginning, but I hope I make some additions to what I can in this meeting. So yeah, like Swami said, SRCC, IAMC, Accenture sounds really, like, oh yeah, ticks all the boxes, and she's done amazing. But there also has been a fight that is a never-ending fight that one has to go through when you're diagnosed with disability. At no point I really want to say, I mean, I don't intend to say that oh, I have done something amazing which should be quote unquote called into an inspiration, because I feel that my disability is not really a challenge. What challenge is that the society and the infrastructure and how we actually deal with disability as a country, as not just country, the world in itself is somewhere behind, but in our country especially, there is some sort of stigma attached to disability, more so when it is visible disability. So I think that is one challenge that has been there. So how I have always talked about in my blogs and in whatever I do is that it is not me who is disabled. It is the infrastructure. It is the design. There is a disability in the design of the infrastructure and the societal mindset that we have to basically be a part of. So yeah, that's basically how I start my talk with. I'll also want to go through how SRCC and everything branded talks now, but how I started actually from a school for kids with special needs. So yeah, I did not really have much of education till I was I was 8 years old. I was in a school where I would just go, and there would be just one teacher who was really nice to me, and she thought that okay, I should teach her something way beyond her uh, job description in that school, basically. So there's to be physiotherapy, there's to be some art activities, but there was no formal education in that school. So I spent about 3 to 4, I think 3 years, I guess from 5 to 8, in two different Asha schools. My father is an army retired personnel, so basically I've shifted too many schools in too many cities. So this was back in Jammu and Kashmir, Udhampur, where I was in the school, and this teacher really believed in me. So she said to my parents, who actually come from a very humble background. They're from a village in Haryana, so they didn't really have too much of education to understand what all I my capabilities can be as a, because for them it was a disabled child they were dealing with, so they were just focusing on making me better. This is how they were dealing with it. So yeah, that's how it began. And that is when my teacher basically said that you should take her to an IQ test, and we can understand uh, what level of education we can send her to. So thankfully, though that IQ test in some ways changed my life. The doctor said that why are you wasting her life by not educating her? And this is when my father and mother really started to think about it. And my father, who didn't really get to educate himself too much from being from a village, he really had this dream that I want my daughter to be educated and be independent in some ways. So yeah, when we were shifting to another city, he asked me very politely that, tell me it's going to be a fight, beta. It's the schools. I mean, I'm talking about like, I'm 28 now, so 20 years back. So yeah, 20 years back, even today, the situation about education and admissions of people with disability is not a cakewalk, but back then it wasn't at all. So yeah, my father really asked me that I'll have to fight a lot. So you tell me what you want. Do you want to study, or do you want to be in the school? I'll do whatever you say. So I said I want to I don't know, I mean, I don't want to be a burden, but I want to study. So yeah, that's when the fight actually started with my parents. I don't want to take credit for that. I have the best parents ever. So yeah, he started going to schools. Nobody would really want to have a child like that. So I basically sometimes joke about it that I was demoted from being special to regular. So yeah, 3 6 months went by. There were fights around that how can we have such a child in our schools? What will we send to? What will we tell to the parents? And all of that. And then finally, after twos and fro's and all the fight, they said, okay, we'll meet this girl, we'll interview her, and if she is good at her interview, then we'll, on probation basis, allow her to take an entrance exam on which, if she clears, we'll give her a probational 2 months, 3 months trial admission to see if we can handle such a child. So that such a child is such a big part of my life now. So it comes from a space of little bit, that there's a tinge of the not happiness, that okay, why the whole quote around my life from childhood. So yeah, that's how I went to the interview. I've been a chatterbox since childhood only, so I think that helps sometime. So in that interview, of course, they asked me certain questions, and the only thing that I remember, because of course it's 20 years back now, so what I remember is them asking, so what do you do in your free time? So, and I said to them that I watch TV. At that time, I used to watch a lot of TV. So he said, okay, bye. And then said, because you don't want to give me admission, so I don't have anything else to do. So I think that was really the ticking point for them in some ways. They asked me certain questions. They asked me some maths also, which I was half good at, half bad at. So yeah, that you don't let me study, probably let me study. So that's how it began. But the school wasn't the administration said to take an exam. I came second in that entrance exam, so thankfully they got me that admission. Then my school teacher, the initial teacher, wasn't really very supportive of me. So there was a lot of discrimination for an 8-year-old to go through at that school. They would leave the whole class, in me behind, and take the whole class outside in the ground, playgrounds, and take the classes. There was one specific teacher who would do that, and in primary schools, there one teacher only takes mostly all the lectures. So yeah, at that point, at 3 4 months, it was really bad because of course I needed someone to support me, but at the same time, I was being discriminated against. So, and I didn't even understand what discrimination is at this point. So, I started feeling traumatized by that. I had headaches. I had to go to a doctor. And all of that happened. And that was point when I was thinking that is it a good idea to be in this school or not? Because it's not conducive. Uh, but at the same time, I think there was this will that I didn't want to not study also because I was enjoying what I had. The work through friends I was making. I was having a life of my own. I mean, meeting people who were not my family and spending time with new friends I was also making apart from all the discrimination that was happening. So so yeah, we just went through it in that period, and then I think with my continuous work probably and my parents' support, it worked out in that year, and I passed with good grades. So the school authorities also understood that it's not a good idea to not let her study. So after that, it was really easy for the next 2 through 3 years. What has been a challenge or something that I have learned in my schooling is that since my father was in the army for the longest time, uh, we changed a lot of schools. That meant we had to go through the process of access, inclusion, understanding every 3 years. So, in some ways, it was nice that it gave me a lot of confidence to actually accept my disability and my body. But at the same time, there was also always this cycle going that I have to answer the similar questions of people, my student friends, and the curiosity and some, I wouldn't call it bullying, but yeah, the stereotypes. Oh, this, we don't have to talk to her. She can't do this. So a lot of that happened, and then one thing that I still talk about a lot, and I feel that is very important for every institution, college, university, school, organization to understand that the accommodation and the cost that they think that people with disabilities are is a very sad way to put it. Uh, and to actually resonate with that creates more problems than actually solutions, because the accommodation is not really a cost. What we are losing on to here is representation. So today, after schooling, college was where I basically understood what all opportunities I have. My college was fully accessible. Unlike all the schools, in my whole schooling, there was not once in my whole all the school I changed what 5 schools in my schooling years, and not once I had a inclusive washroom that I could use. So I always needed someone to assist me, or I would not go to the washroom, to be honest. I would not drink water. There would be changes that I'll make to my diet so that there is no need to go to the washroom at least. So, or my mama would come in middle of the period so that she's around and I need to go to the loo, she can help me. So I mean, to think of a 10-year-old or 12-year-old has to think 100 times before drinking water is not something I would like to propagate in a society anyway, whoever that person is. So, and it's not changed even today. My college had inclusive washrooms and inclusive classrooms, and I could go and explore every corner of the college. But it hasn't been the experience always. And even today, so many parents and so many students actually do come and talk to me on social media and say that we are still feeling this way, how to deal with it. So this actually is something that I think has made me more vocal about the situation and these experiences and the discrimination in even going out. I think there's just two ways people treat people with disability. This is how I have been treated, so I don't speak for everybody, so I would speak from my experience. But most of the time, either it is, oh my god, purane janam ka paap, and you're a burden on your parents. For the people who don't speak Hindi, Purane Janam ka paap is like, your sins of the past birth, and that is why I'm suffering. And I should pray to God to change all of this, and maybe then I'll be okay, I'll be normal. And there was a guy who actually gave me 5 rupees. He threw a 5 rupee coin on me while I was traveling, because he thought, since I'm someone with a disability, I'm most probably a beggar. I mean, I was with my friends and everything, and the whole event actually shook me a lot. So yeah, so there is either the pity, the sympathy, the burden of your past, and telling your parents that she should have died because she is making you expend so much, and that side of the story. And then there is another side of the story where one woman in metro, on my birthday, I was traveling to meet some friends for a party, and she thought that, oh my god, how careless her parents are, and they don't love her at all, and that is why they have left her alone in this metro, and they don't want her. Basically, it was 6 7 years back, and she basically wanted to some way kidnap me. I've kidnapped being the wrong word, but yeah, she was too adamant that she wanted to take me home. She said that, unlike your parents, I would love you, and I would give everything you want on the bed. I would not let you out because you're Devika Roop, incarnation of a goddess. And so yeah, I'm here. I'm in the metro, scared. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Should I tell her and break her bubble that I am basically doing this because my parents really love me a lot and I love this life? And I got really scared at one point. Actually, it's funny, but I actually left the metro and took the next metro to wherever I was going, because I was like, I don't really know how to deal with this right now. So these are the two extremes. I'm either the inspiration. I mean, inspiration in the sense that I feel that the work I do, like today, I write for people. I write. I am working, maybe sometimes I do some good work and I am making some change happen. If people know today that there are buses which are wheelchair accessible in Delhi, and maybe this is because I am talking about it, and all of this change is happening, then maybe yes, I'm making some change in someone's life, and probably I am inspiring you in ways I don't understand. But at the same time, labeling inspiration, but not acknowledging the person's identity, is something that I have realized is a big problem. And and I wish to change that in whatever I do. So I post all kinds of stories, be it Instagram, Twitter, so that I make people aware that living with disability is a challenge. But at the same time, if I am being awarded just because I'm waking up and getting out of bed and taking a train to college, then it shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be something that, oh my god, she's the only one doing. No, I'm not actually. There are 250,000 people in Delhi only who are people with disability identified by the census 2001, and the census has too many problems. So it is not even a number that I would say is correct. Over the world, 15% is what the percentage of population is identified as disabled. In India, that's not even two, and it's not because we are doing great. No, we have malnutrition. There is no medical attention, and I mean, we are living in a pandemic, so we know how our infrastructure, medical infrastructure is. So yeah, let's so this whole divide, that we don't even know people with disabilities, we don't meet people with disability. um my friends who have lived with me for now 10 years, like they've known me, they've partied with me, they've studied with me. One big change that I have seen in my life over my experience with people with no disabilities is that they are aware. I mean, they didn't have someone who they identify with that, oh, she needs a ramp, she doesn't need a staircase to go. She's okay when the venue has an elevator, when there is a when there is some sort of a design that accommodates people with disability. By accommodation, I don't mean, oh my god, cost, but I mean that there is access and there is inclusion. So when now my friends also talk, the stereotype or whatever imbibed ableism that there is has gone a little, because they know that it's not hunky dory, but also it's not too much of a big deal. Maybe if there were, my cousin says this, my she is 12 years old, and she called me one day and said that, I want you to come to my school someday. And then she said that, Didi, how would you come? You can come to this place, you can come to my classroom, but then the auditorium is somewhere on the upstairs, and there are steps to it. So how would you come? So basically, now she thinks in that way because she's seen me since childhood. I don't know if I'm making sense to you guys, but this is what inclusion does. So what inclusion does is you understand that, okay, the needs that this person has are different from my needs, and which is actually same for everyone. My how I behave and how I react to certain situation may be different from someone in my family. So it doesn't really is not something to be careless about. If there is representation, then people understand these things and they actually change those spaces. Like today, we have inclusive transport in Delhi. There is metro. Of course there are flaws to it. No, people are still not told about how accessible transport, how accessible infrastructure, how the mindset actually helps people in progressing. Out of the population of 2% that I talked about of people with disabilities in India, less than 1% of that 2% actually ends up in a high school degree. Like, because there are so many dropouts, um, because there is, of course, the parent support is not there. Parents also don't really know what to do. The schools don't know how to deal with different kind of disabilities. So imagine taking away livelihood and independence from that big of a population. If less than 1% of the people of those 2% that we are talking about are going to high school, think about how many of them actually go to college and how many of them from college ends up in a job also in India. I have had, I'll just take 5-10 more minutes to tell how I feel, how the experience of job has been in some ways to I mean, I'm in touch with my community as well. So I hear what kind of questions are asked. So even after being, SRCC, IMC, all of this, CAIPCC, every time I've sat in an interview, uh, 2 out of 5 at least. I mean, I can't name companies now, but they will ask me questions like, how many people in in your family are disabled? How do you actually? So I have a electronic wheelchair, so they'll talk about how many hours can I sit on a wheelchair, and basically how did I get my disability, and how the questions actually, how our cognitive bias is such, even when recruiting, that we start those questions by asking questions about what they see I can't do, rather than actually asking questions which actually are on my CV, and how my profile would actually be suitable or not suitable for the job. So in that ways, when you've studied and you've worked hard through your life to come at a point where you think that okay, now maybe there will be some difference. We're proving ourselves over and over and over and over again, but at the same time, when that doesn't happen, it's not a nice place to be. So this is what I would like to change. This is what I'd want to tell everybody, that we all have biases. We all have our I have my biases myself, because I only understand my disability very much, but I also have biases towards other people who may be disabled, non-disabled. But at the same time, I'm actively working on understanding my own biases, and this is how we can maybe bring a change in how we see people around us. So I hope that we don't um, go to a place where we don't understand different needs. Um in a pandemic, this is what we have understood, that everything can be accommodated. The whole world went from work offices, and saying that our infrastructure is not accessible to you. Sorry, you're smart, but we can't have you right now. To actually, the whole world shifted to a work from home situation now. So I mean, I was thinking about it also, that why is it happening is because we don't have policies, we don't have right policies. Talking about the pandemic itself, this is one thing that I've been actively talking about. In my columns, and is that we've mostly, people with disabilities have mostly been used to the lockdown. I mean, it's been a self-imposed lockdown for a lot of us for years and decades, and the whole world shifted to a lockdown in 2 years, and we're all going crazy, right? Like, we all desperately want this to go, and this go to end, and so that we can go out. We want to get vaccinated. I hope we all are. Please get vaccinated. But in that also, it is so ironic that today the policies are so sad, that the population of who is disabled is always an afterthought. How after a self-imposed lockdown of decades, we're still not the ones who are being prioritized for vaccine. So this is how actually, again, coming back to the same cycle and the vicious cycle, that there is no representation in policy making as well. So if there were people who understood these biases that we have, these imbibed biases, probably we'd be able to bring some changes. And this is not an afterthought, but a thought which actually lives with us, that everybody is different, but everybody is also same. And this is how, yes, there could be different ways that they work, there could be different ways that they feel comfortable, but that doesn't mean that you're more normal than I am. So I think that's where I have my my two bits at that. If you actually have these stereotypes imbibed, all of us do at some point. But then please reach out to know, maybe understand how many people with disability do you know in your life, or maybe count about it. But if your score is more than 10, I would like to know personally, and how that experience has changed you. If you have someone in the family, if you have some friend you've known for years, or how many people actually do you know. Because if you don't, then maybe think why you don't. It's not like people are invisible. We're everywhere. We could be everywhere, but if we are not there, then maybe it's time to think that it's us who are maybe lacking on meeting people with diversity. And diversity doesn't really sometimes I also feel that the word diversity is a lot abused also. So maybe in a more depth manner, how we actually understand what exactly diversity include, what exactly intersectionality includes. I also say sometimes that I feel I'm very lucky and privileged to be where I am, because because of course, I come from an upper caste family. My father was in army. I was lucky. They're supportive. I got to school at the right point. I got to go to college at the right point. There were certain things that came my way because I went to SRCC. I could know about MBA. I knew about other stuff that I could do. This, so of course it's come with a lot of uh, privilege also. But then at the same time, I'm also a woman with a disability, with a mobility disability. So I think it's very intersectional, and it's, we can say that yeah, I'm privileged, but also I'm also uh, discriminated at every point of my life. So where do I draw the line? So I think how we can change this is by knowing more people, by understanding that. Maybe it's not inspirational, maybe it could be maybe it doesn't need to be to tell, to not tell your children that. Or sometimes when I meet parents now, when I'm in malls, what happens is that parents, if children are curious, so they'll ask, what is this, why is she in this thing? They would not tell their children that this is a wheelchair, and she is on a wheelchair because she can't walk, or she uses this to move around for mobility. And that really bothers me sometimes, that maybe we tell the kids today that this is a wheelchair and this is a prosthetic, and this is, that person is using a stick to move around, or different way people navigate through life. Maybe children will grow up understanding better than maybe how we are currently. So yeah, that's how I will try to end what my monologue has been, by saying that we all have our biases, and we all are navigating through lives in our different ways by different accommodations. So maybe it's time we meet some people and understand our own biases, and yeah, try to remove them in some small ways, because if one person's life is impacted positively, then maybe we've done good in our lives. So thank you so much. I'll now take questions. Swami, if there are some questions that everybody wants to ask, I'm very happy to take them. Before that, I have one thing that I like to ask. How many, if someone wants to say something about how many of you think that having ramps helps normal people as people with disability? And it is, what do you think about this question? And what are your thoughts? So if anybody wants to answer to this question, I'm waiting.
So let me take the one on ramp, and then some of my colleagues also will take it. I think it's not only limited to ability, as in somebody with mobility limitations. Age, for example. I've seen myself, maybe it's not that I'm ancient, but I'm getting to 60. So after lunch, when we stroll, I do tend to take the ramp because it's easier for me. It's got nice railings for grip while it provides mobility access. I can also hold on to it and go. So anywhere where there's a ramp, it eases access for a lot of people. There could be someone who's injured temporarily and needs a crutch or a support or a walker to move about. Even for them, a ramp works much better than a staircase, for example. So I think one should not just be confining to certain definitions of ability, which are either permanent or temporary, but provide a ramp as an absolute alternate solution to people who want to use it and let them use it.
Yeah, yeah. So that is what I was trying to say. So how when people, most of the time, I like how you mentioned abilities and disabilities, or in a way to understand how, Swami. Once in my lecture, actually, there's a lecture I was part of in IIM Calcutta, and I said that I posted this question in a classroom, that how many of you think that it helps normal as well as disabled people? And then most of them said, raise their hands. And at the same time, my question to them was that, then probably you also didn't really pay attention to when I said the word normal. So because we have our definitions of normal and what's not normal. So I think this is something of a trick thing that I do in a in a more live situation. Now I can see people, so I guess the trick doesn't work here. But I'm really happy how the definitions are changing now. I think we are becoming more fluid. So that is something something I feel good about.
Yeah. I mean, normal is a myth. We've known that, I think. It's just a convenient way of labeling things. It's nothing like that. Everybody is normal. That's about it. So those are tags and labels. I see some questions coming up. Uh, so I see a.
Will you just see that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll be able to see the questions, right? Yeah, I can see the chat.
Yeah, you can see the chat. So
Okay. Yeah.
Anu has commented on this. Um, any question, Anu, you have for Preeti?
Yeah, hi Preeti, hi Swami. I was very touched to hear your account, Preeti, and actually it gave me goosebumps because we do see people who are different from us, but and we know that they have these challenges, but to see, to hear it in first person, what you have gone through and what people like you would be going through every day. It's really, it makes me think that humanity itself has really a long way to go before we really feel for people and then be really accommodative in all senses, be sensitive to people, and that it's a mindset change, and it's a long way to go, I feel. I mean, and you're really brave. So I think all our problems seem small when compared to yours. So you're really brave, and I hope you continue this way and wish you a great life ahead. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us.
Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this challenge of facing cognitive biases, right, is and what you narrated about in the interview is so real, and it's faced even by women, all women, for example, depending on if you take ability out of the equation, things like are you married, do you have children, as if that's going to be a deterrent to work, and it's harder for someone like you. So, what do you think is the education that's required to make the focus on the innate ability that you have rather than getting into the trap of what you may or may not be able to do? That's how people were trying to position, right? Do you have any views to educate us further in this, not being parochial?
Yeah. Honestly, I once took a session with one of the organizations 2 3 years back with HRs, and we try to understand, what bias, what questions they do actually have, and where those questions are coming from. I think where we lack at broad organization levels is maybe not. I mean, of course, sometimes there are sensitizations programs and these, but a couple of times those sensitization programs are not really hosted by people with disability or someone who actually represents uh, the community that is being discriminated against in some ways. So then, if those questions were asked, to be very honest, those questions were in sometime in sometimes they were legitimate questions also, like, because I haven't really come across someone, so I have a certain profile that I have to match to. So I don't know if this question is sensitive or it's derogatory. So I mean, a couple of these questions are really coming from not a bad space, but they are um positioned in a way that they come across as derogatory and discriminatory. So at this, I think, though, it is to break your cognitive biases in interviewing also, you have to know that you have those biases, right? And those biases can be understood better in maybe um, um, having an educative training where people are actually working in real time with the people with different needs, so that the whole questions that come from that space are different. Am I making sense, Swami?
Yeah, you are. And in Sasken, we do employ close to about 8 people with the different ability spectrum. And to that extent, it has sensitized us to looking at diversity and inclusion more philosophically than just looking at it as two nice words to talk about. They have become buzzwords or jargon.
Yeah.
So we do have a person with mobility challenge in Sasken, and he's able to access our facilities to a very large extent. Okay, may not be 100%, but almost. Okay, and we have other people with different varieties of challenges, but then we make it a point to sort of work shoulder to shoulder. So there is no segregation on the basis of this thing, or at least it sensitizes people to open up. And in one way that it has helped is there are many Sassians who have family members who have these challenges. So them seeing at work this inclusion happening in the real world gives a lot of hope to them as well. So
Yeah, it does.
So that's where the mindset change, what you said, the mindset is not in the person with a different ability. The mindset is in the person who doesn't, the challenge really lies in the person who doesn't have that ability to embrace it in totality without labeling it. The minute we label it, we sort of discriminate in some sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is also how I feel, that if there are more people working in our teams with different backgrounds, different needs, different you know uh, identities, however they identify, we understand better. If there are more women in workforce, we understand what challenges patriarchy has laid upon us. So uh, similar with LGBTQ identities. So yeah, if we have representation, we will understand that our biases are not really that valid. So I think the mindset change happens when there are more people around us with different ways of navigating through lives and identifying.
Thank you. Any other questions in the chat, or anybody wants to ask a question, even if you haven't typed, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Anis or Geeta, Joyce, any one of you?
Hi, this is Anis here, Preeti.
Yeah, hi Anis. Sorry we called you. Gave me very MBA feels.
I was just wondering actually how did I change myself to a woman when I looked at the background, because that is my background on team.
Yeah, I just noticed.
I joined a bit late. Sorry, I was in another meeting, and I just kept wondering, and this is each time I come across an Mandara event, and thanks to all my colleagues who arrange these wonderful sessions, there's something very inspiring to take away. So from this, I think there's one more common thing is I had done some special education from IIM Kolkata. So there is another common factor. I think the most important thing is it's not a question, but just trying to reflect on. See, there are a lot of biases which people carry in terms of, or let me not call it bias, but rather actually, if suppose you battle out all the odds and do your best to demonstrate somebody saying that something which is unachievable is achievable. And what I understand and learned from the brief profile which was shared with by my colleagues, and that's something which you have done it right. You would have had scenarios where there would have been some people who would be questioning the status quo in terms of how could this happen with somebody like Preeti, right? Now, what is your inspirational advice for all of us in terms of um, how do we respond to such a situation? Because reacting to a situation in this scenario doesn't help, because it just creates an inner stress. But more importantly, how does it typically, how do we respond to such a situation which typically gives a a sense of belonging to the other person, and the person starts thinking very differently, saying that no, this is something uh, which is something which is going to get into the mainstream, and it is something which is not an acceptability which was maybe of something in the past. In the sense, like for example, if today someone says that woman is not supposed to work in the industry and they are supposed to be homemaker, as it was a thought process in past many years ago. But today that scenario has totally changed. It's no longer a woman who is typically a housemaker alone, but I think the men are contributing more to it primarily. So it's about the mindset shift. So what is your advice on how do we enable this mindset shift in the society at large?
I think I think the work has to be done by each individual themselves in some ways, because I also feel that the mindset changes when we want it to change in some ways, and we want to educate ourselves about different identities. Women are fighting for their rights, but at the same time, there has to be an equal opportunity to make that happen also. So if that equal opportunity is taken away, then the mindsets also would not really be updated with time as such. Of course, it's a slow journey, is what I have seen in my small living years. That it's a rather slow learning that we are all going through. But how it changes is by actually again knowing people around you. And if you, even if you don't actually, it's important to understand what policies are there, what where are we actually lacking, and maybe educating ourselves in case we can in some ways understand that barrier that has been created, and the gap that has been created by lack of policies, lack of law, lack of understanding needs of people identities. Then maybe little by little, maybe asking questions about maybe including people and the right representative in the right processes. Maybe this will, if 10 men are talking about how feminism works, then maybe we are missing the point. So similarly, if there is no person in any policy making or disability inclusion or any identity related work we are doing, if we don't have those people represent and come that okay, this is what happens, because then you don't really, nobody's questioning the biases, or not biases, nobody's questioning the belief system that we've brought up, we've been conditioned to. So I think this is where it changes, having people at all levels and at all levels of work process, in policy, education, where if there are more people from different identities and different needs, who understand at least their perspective, they're able to come forward with, then I guess that change can happen more rapidly than it is right now.
So what you're saying is, I think, it's more about internalization and realizing that that's an important thing, and that leads to a mindset shift. Not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, externalization in the sense, if there are more people,
No, internalization. What I
yeah,
say is, unless and until I feel it very strongly that this is something
yeah.
which
Yeah, I mean, if you feel strongly that I'm as competent as any other person in this room, and it's not because some law says you that you can't discriminate, because you'll end up in jail, but you're doing this because, of course, you strongly believe, is where I think we make progress.
Thanks. Thanks, Preeti.
Thank you so much.
Preeti, hi, this is Amita. I had a question,
Yeah,
which
please
is
go ahead.
that it's very easy for us to look at you, and you look so brave and so composed and all of that. And of course, you've fought the whole battle for yourself, and you've come a very long way to where you are. But emotionally, I'm sure there have been moments in your life where you feel, I wish I was able to do what the person what my friends are able to do, or what my what my family is able to do. For example, I would also like to get up and dance at a wedding or stuff like that. So how do you deal with that from an emotional perspective?
To be honest, I'm Uh, how I deal with it is that with the whole dancing situation, I dance on my wheelchair. So mostly I don't. I have really. Actually, this is also different for me from someone who actually got a mobility challenge later in their life. So I was born, like I've lived this life all my life, this is all I know. So for me, I have really embraced it. That okay, there are emotional challenges that come, and I'm not saying I'm always this smiling, or do I not question some things? I do, but at the same time, there are certain things I'm very imbibed. Like this is how I'm conditioned to. If I'm in a party, or if I'm in a wedding with my family, if everyone's dancing, I'm dancing in my own way. Like it's just thinking that there's someone who don't know how to dance at all. Also, maybe I could, but I'm better at dancing in my wheelchair as well. So I think. This is how I think about such situations. Sometimes what actually bothers me more is the questions, and sometimes when people say that I have that oh, it's still not worth it, or something like that. This is what I feel bad sometimes about that. I've tried to. I mean, I'm some way tired, or sometimes you get tired also of fighting. Of always telling people, okay, no, this is not how it should be. Sometimes I don't want to fight the fight. Sometimes I just want to enjoy also. So I think this is where I have started to draw the line also, that okay, it's not my own, it's not a whole duty of me that I have to fight this fight always. I can take my break and be myself. So I think this is how I try to deal with the questions. Sometimes it's just trigger. I just get triggered, and I don't actually deal with that in that moment. Also, this is what I mean. I've decided. I've come to a point where I decide not to engage in certain thoughts and in certain questions that also come across. So I think this is how I make my emotional peace with it.
Your positivity is absolutely commendable. Thank you so much. We have so much to learn.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I must say that it's also contagious, much needed in this time. So I would like to actually propose a small thank you note. I just take back A, B, C, D, E from your talk. One is not only have you accepted what you've been dealt with, but you've also trying to get the society to accept it. So you're an agent of change in that way. You talked about your hardship, which basically, in some sense, dished out not by your own limitations, but what society saw as inability to accept and provide for. Buoyancy is something, is a second alphabet I could think about. Third, there's no need for me to even look at what I should say. The third C is the courage. You stand for real charisma and courage. I can add one more C to that. Four, I take away determination from what I see. There's a fierce determination to enjoy life, not just to prove oneself or whatever it is, to just take the hand you dealt with and play. And five, an infectious enthusiasm. So I think we are much richer having interacted with you. You have taught us the basics of life, what we have to do in one sense, though you call yourself pretty young, which you are. But I think your wisdom definitely belies your age. There's much to learn and much to internalize. Thank you so much for inspiring all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for calling me. I feel very, very humbled by being on such a platform. Years back, I think this would have been something I wouldn't have imagined as well. So thank you so much for having me over. I hope I could add something and make your day a little better in some ways. Thank you.
Thank you.